The gene that traveled 10,000 miles without a body. Across the continents, across oceans, across mountains and deserts, something moved. It had no feet, no heartbeat, no voice. And yet, it traveled farther than any ancient caravan, farther than any migrating tribe, farther than any wandering explorer. A single gene, a fragment of life, a whisper passed through millennia. It leapt from lineage to lineage, weaving itself into strangers, surviving wars, plagues, famines, forgotten kingdoms and vanished empires, a passenger in the bloodstream of humanity, crossing 10,000 miles without ever belonging to a single body. It became a ghost traveler, surviving only through inheritance, an ancestral stowaway, a messenger with no memory of where it began, yet found today in people living thousands of miles from where the first spark occurred. What could make a piece of DNA journey half the world? What story forced it to migrate where humans didn't? And more importantly, why did it survive when so many others disappeared? This is the tale of the gene that refused to stay still, a traveler without a vessel, a lineage without a name. And to understand its journey, we must travel back to the very edge of human origins, where the world was young and the map of our species had barely been drawn. The world we know today, nations, borders, cultures, languages, is a recent invention. But the story held in our DNA is ancient, global, and borderless. In archaeology, we follow bones. In history, we follow written words. But in genetics, we follow the paths carved by inheritance, journeys where the travelers are not people, but the small codes inside them. Across Eurasia, Africa, Oceania, and the Americas, scientists have found something peculiar, a gene showing up in populations that should have no direct contact, no shared language, no evidence of migration between them, and yet the DNA proves someone or something connected them. From the Pacific Islands to Central Asia, from ancient Siberia to the far edges of South America, the mark of this gene appears like a fingerprint left by a time traveler. But to understand how a single genetic signature traveled 10,000 miles without carrying any body with it, we must understand how genes migrate differently than humans. Humans migrate with intention. Genes migrate with probability. And sometimes a gene can become the ultimate survivor, slipping silently across populations, leaving no archaeological trace except the code it carried. This is not just biology. This is a mystery, a global puzzle that connects continents that history says were never connected. But DNA remembers what history forgets. The story begins 40,000 to 50,000 years ago, when the world was colder, harsher, and far emptier than today. Human groups were small, often fewer than 100 individuals, wandering through Ice Age landscapes. Somewhere in Southeast Asia, or perhaps along the ancient coasts of the Indian Ocean, a mutation occurred, a small genetic shift, a change so subtle it altered no appearance, no behavior, no visible trait, and yet it survived. This gene, like many others, might have begun in one clan, a small family living near river deltas, coastlines, or dense forests. But the early human world was fluid. Tribes split, rejoined, disappeared, merged. Marriage exchanges, seasonal gatherings, accidental encounters, all allowed genes to spread, even when people themselves didn't travel far.
But then something unusual happened. This specific gene spread at a rate that outpaced the movement of the people who carried it. Through ancient population networks, from the Andaman coasts, through the Malay Peninsula, across island chains and continental bridges, it traveled through communities who never imagined they were passing down a legacy that would one day circle the world. By 30,000 years ago, the gene appears in ancient Siberian groups, frozen hunters living thousands of miles north of the gene's origin point. How did it get there? Not through mass migrations, not through conquering armies, but through quiet exchanges, generation after generation. A chain of inheritance stretching across 10,000 miles. While humans settled, grew food, built shelters, and died, the gene continued moving. It was patient. It had all the time in the world. As the climate shifted and the glaciers melted, human populations expanded outward, pushing into new lands, following animals, water sources, and warmer climates. Population bottlenecks, moments when only a small number of humans survived, dramatically reshaped the genetic landscape. It was during one of these bottlenecks, around 20,000 years ago, that the traveling gene took on a new life. Small groups of Siberian hunter-gatherers carried it eastward toward Beringia, the great land bridge that once connected Asia to the Americas. From there, the gene entered the earliest peoples of North America, not because they sought it, not because it conferred an advantage, but simply because it happened to exist in the right person at the right time. By 15,000 years ago, the gene had made the journey into a continent humans had only just begun exploring. But the story doesn't stop there. Further south, in the jungles of the Amazon, scientists discovered an astonishing clue. Indigenous groups in the Amazon carried a genetic signature not to other Native American groups, but to ancient populations from Southeast Asia and Oceania. How could two populations separated by oceans share a gene long before seafaring technology existed? There were no boats large enough, no known contact, no recorded migrations that could explain it. Yet, the DNA was real, unmistakable, a bridge across the world that left no physical trace. This gene had crossed 10,000 miles, not through voyages, not through migrations, but through deep time inheritance, inherited through ancient population structures that predated history itself. This is the ghost lineage. Unlike genes tied to eye color, height, or immunity, this traveler gene wasn't about function. Its significance wasn't physical, it was historical. It served as a marker, a breadcrumb left behind by a vanished population. Scientists refer to it as a ghost haplotype, a genetic pattern pointing to an ancient people who no longer exist in their original form, but whose DNA echoes in modern humans. This ghost lineage contributes between 1% and 5% of certain populations' DNA, a small percentage, yet powerful enough to rewrite entire historical narratives. It suggests that a lost ancestral group once lived across Asia. They interacted with early humans in ways unseen in archaeology. Their genetic footprint spread into Oceania, into Siberia, and into the Americas, and eventually reached the Amazon, 10,000 miles from its birthplace. Some call it the Population Z lineage. Others call it the ancient Southern Eurasian ghost. But no matter the name, its presence is undeniable. A genetic survivor of a world erased by time. DNA does not dictate culture. Genes do not predict identity, but they do weave stories that human memory often loses. To know that people in the Amazon share ancestry with people whose homeland may have been thousands of miles away, not through migration, but through deep-time inheritance, reveals something profound. Humans have always been more connected than we think. A child born today in Brazil, a fisherman in the Philippines, a hunter in Papua New Guinea, a herder in Central Asia, a tribe in the forests of Myanmar, all carry echoes of a people who vanished before the first city, before the first written word, before the first myth. We inherit culture through stories, rituals, languages, but we inherit history through blood. This traveling gene does not change identity, but it enriches it.